Well, let's get more on this now with Tom O'Connor, who joins us from New York. He's a senior foreign policy writer at Newsweek. Good to have you back with us, Tom. Can I start by asking you about these alleged drone strikes by Ukraine deep inside Russian territory? Do you think there's any truth to them? Because it would seem quite unprecedented if Ukraine did in fact launch drones to attack airfields in the center of Russia.
Certainly. Well, there are some indications this was in fact Ukraine. Of course, if they weren't, Ukraine would be inclined to somewhat take credit for them no matter what on a psychological warfare level. But if it was Ukraine, I think what it is an answer to Russia's missile strike, saying that we too can strike the center of your country. Now, I wouldn't draw any equivalency, even if this was Ukraine, into the capabilities of the two sides to conduct such long-range operations. We have seen some limited instances of attacks within Russia on Russian territory, but that remains extremely limited in Ukraine's case. This war is very much still happening on Ukrainian soil, and I think that's part of the Russian strategy right now is to remind Ukraine of that. I think through their missile strikes, they're trying to make Ukraine unlivable for Ukrainians as long as the government continues to pursue the conflict. And I think from the Ukrainian side, they're trying to make Ukraine unlivable for Russians there as the conflict continues, of course, into these winter months.
Can I ask you about this oil price cap now? We know that it's come into effect. It was devised by the EU, G7 and Australian nations in a bid to, I guess, strike that balance between punishing Russia but also causing the least amount of disruption to global oil supply and prices. Do you think that plan will actually work? Will it have the desired effect?
Well, it's difficult to say because just like any sanctions, even the ones taken before this conflict and in the early stages of this conflict, these things take time to really unfold, especially their ramifications on the Russian economy. But the global economic effects at times can be immediate. And I think that's really what the focus is right now. And that's the concern the White House has. And at the same time, we have to remember that there are many countries out there, big countries such as China and India, to name two, that are not going to abide by these price caps. So whether this actually has a tangible effect on Russia, whether any of these measures have a tangible effect on Russia or its capability to continue waging this conflict, I think really remains to be seen. Russia has demonstrated a resiliency to these matters. I'm not saying that they're not feeling any pain at all. I think they are. And I think that that pain will continue to develop in new ways as the conflict goes on. It certainly seems like it's not going to be ending anytime soon. It's a protracted conflict by all means, but I still think that we've yet to see any major turning point in how these economic effects will have any sort of a desired consequence on Russia's decision-making process.
And we know Russia has been accused of weaponizing food supply. It's now being accused of weaponizing the winter. Do you think that Russia really is looking to target not only Western countries, but especially Ukraine at a time when perhaps a lot of people will be experiencing freezing temperatures?
Yeah, just as I said before, I think that's central to the Russian strategy right now. At the same time, we have to remember this is something that President Zelensky himself has said: is that fighting becomes difficult during these winter months. It becomes far more complicated logistically and physically. And in this situation, that actually favors Russia in many ways, because just as Ukraine is trying to chip away from the lands that Russia has claimed and annexed unilaterally, Russia is trying to maintain all it can on these territories that are far from under its control. And this includes reinforcing, trying to integrate these four regions into the Russian Federation. The less movement that happens in this conflict from either side really favors Russia. Now, that doesn't mean it's a guarantee. Ukraine has certainly demonstrated itself successful when the odds are stacked against it throughout this conflict. But I think at this stage right now, we should expect a bit of a quieting. That's what U.S. officials are saying, a bit of a lull until springtime. And I think that Russians will be happy to hear that.
Okay, Tom O'Connor, always good to get your analysis. Thank you again for joining us.